Brussels is changing beyond recognition. We've had some insane statistics come out recently that 1 in 10 children only in Brussels has both of their parents who are Belgian. Sam, tell me about the transformation of your country.
Almost 60% of the people in Antwerp has a foreign background. So we are already a minority in my own city, in Antwerp, where I live. For every jihadi attack that is committed, there are more than 10 that are foiled. If you really want to solve it, the problem really, then we need remigration, of course.
Are you scared?
No, I'd rather die than shut up.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. Hope you're all keeping well. Boy, do I have a story for you today. In today's episode of What on Earth is Going On in the World, the series where I take you around the world, sharing with you the politically incorrect realities of what's truly going on in different countries. We're going to be talking about Belgium. Now, not a lot of people think about Belgium, talk about Belgium. I can't remember the last time we had a breaking news story from Belgium. We don't talk about it when it comes to the Islamification and fall of Europe, the Western civilization that's falling that we're all talking about, the grooming gangs when it comes to the UK. And I talk a lot about what's going on in Europe. However, all this time, right under my nose, I have ignored Belgium. However, as you're about to find out, everyone needs to be talking about Belgium. All eyes on Belgium. In fact, Belgium is the ISIS recruitment capital of the Western world. More ISIS fighters were recruited and flew off from Belgium to join ISIS in Iraq and Syria than pretty much anywhere else in the Western world. We are also seeing the kinds of extreme depravity and violence and derangement in the form of abuse of children taking place in Belgium. I want to get into all of this in today's episode, because stick around, because this is going to blow your mind. Now, to kick things off, this video went viral recently, and it shows a beach in Belgium covered in trash. Now, European beaches have been renowned for not being covered in trash, generally speaking. I've been to India, I've been to the beaches of Mumbai, they look exactly like this. But now we are importing people from the third world. European beaches and towns, which are renowned for being some of the cleanest in the world, are now starting to look like this. We're also seeing town squares, town centers, shopping districts being populated by predominantly Muslims these days. So here in Molenbeek, which remember this, I'm going to talk about Molenbeek in just a second. It's the terrorist recruitment hotspot of Europe. This is it. This is the shopping district in Molenbeek in Belgium. Predominantly women in burqas and hijabs buying Islamic clothing and Islamic food from Islamic shops, from Islamic shopkeepers. And Europe is just expected to just kind of be okay with this and accept it as normal. And we can't say anything about it, otherwise you're deemed as intolerant or Islamophobic. Meanwhile, no one is going to the Islamic world and saying at all your shopping bazaars, you now need to have all these European girls in low-cut tops with their hair out, or people with Christian crosses, selling non-halal food. Like, no one's going to the Middle East and demanding that of them. But somehow when it comes to Europe, it's okay, right? This is the kind of sleepwalking into Europe's destruction that we're just meant to put up with, and it's happening before our eyes. Here is another video clip showing the kinds of terrorism and violence that we're seeing from a percentage of the Islamic population in Belgium. Here you have this guy wielding a machete. Apparently his name's Mohammed, I don't know. And apparently someone looked at him funny, and now he's gonna threaten to chop people's heads off with a machete. Okay, how can you raise your family in environments like this? How can you raise kids? This is why we are seeing all across Europe the internal exodus of native populations into the countrysides, where at least for now it's safer, while the European cities are being overrun by this kind of thing. Here's another example of a cultural enricher into Belgium on this train, pouring a bucket of supposedly feces and urine over an unsuspecting passenger. Now, who does this? And could you imagine this being the other way around? Imagine if you had one white guy pouring a bucket of feces and urine on a Muslim person or a black person. It would be global news for the next 3 years. We'd have entire movements about it. We would have celebrities raising millions of dollars for a newly created charity about this. We would have celebrities on the red carpet having pins about this. We'd have sports athletes, taking a knee. This is what would happen. Or indeed, if someone from Europe went to Africa and did this on a train in Somalia, or let's say they had trains, I don't know what Somalia is like. Let's say they went and did this in a public place, that person will be lynched. They will be murdered on the spot. But in Europe, again, you just have to put up with it as these guys run off and the police do nothing about it. And we have, again, this mass humiliation of Europe take place. The graping of young girls, the overtaking of cities, and now the outright pouring of feces on someone as like this height of humiliation. Welcome to Europe in 2026. We're also seeing more of this kind of antisocial behavior, people just driving around recklessly, setting fire to stuff, setting off fireworks. We're seeing massive amounts of Muslims praying in the streets, which they don't need to do. There's tons of mosques now all across Europe, but for some reason they have to now block streets to do this. I don't know why, other than a sign of dominance and declaration that this is now our streets. And we're just overall seeing the transformation of what Europe looks like. And no one shows you these video clips when it comes to the tourism board of Belgium or various other countries in Europe. But when you get there, you start to see that, oh my goodness, this place is like a dystopia. I was in Brussels in, I think, 2018, 2019. I was around the main train station area. I could not believe that this place was Europe. And this was before I became conservative. This is before I started waking up to what's going on in Europe. And I was not married at the time. I had my fiance there. And I remember just thinking, we need to get out of here. Like, this place is rough. We're getting funny looks. It was almost like a no-go zone, coming to think of it. And it was wild. It was absolutely wild. And now this is the new face of Belgium. Anyway, let's start watching some videos now showing the kind of demographic changes that we're seeing in Belgium.
Only 10% of children in Brussels are of Belgian origin. They're coming in, they're having 6 to 7 children per family. Some of them are even having multiple wives. And the native Europeans are having 1 to 2 because they're being taxed insane amounts. They can't afford the cost of living while they're paying for these asylum seekers and their families.
There you go. In a nutshell, that is why Europe is dying. Just tons of people flooding into the country, not working, living off of the welfare state, having all these babies, building mosques, organizing politically, voting in their political candidates, lobbying the political candidates. Meanwhile, Europeans not having children because they're too busy working, paying tax into the welfare state so that other people can live at home for free. Now check out this video, which is even more disturbing, from a Belgian MP.
It's also the threat of jihad. We are constantly in Belgium on threat level 3. 4 is the maximum, and we are constantly on level 3.
Van de Belgische staat. En zij hebben 9 bollen gedaan, zogezegd 9 provincies. Inshallah, binnenkort.
Brussels is changing beyond recognition. We've had some insane statistics come out recently that 1 in 10 children only in Brussels has both of their parents who are Belgian. Sam, tell me about the transformation of your country.
Almost 60% of the people in Antwerp has a foreign background. So we are already a minority in my own city, in Antwerp, where I live. Mass migration is always bad because it's always destructive for the society that is accepting the mass migration, and it's also destructive for the society that see all these people going away. For every jihadi attack that is committed, there are more than 10 that are foiled. If you really want to solve it, the problem really, then we need remigration, of course.
Are you scared?
No. I'd rather die than shut up.
Amen to that. Europe is cooked unless we start having stronger leaders. We have had generations now of weak leaders creating difficult times and creating this entire mess. Now, these difficult times are going to demand people like you and me to actually become tougher and to rise to the occasion. Now, check this out. In that video, you heard him talk about how Belgium's terrorist threat level is at 3. That's because Belgium is the ISIS terrorist recruitment capital of Europe. In fact, Belgium produced more ISIS fighters per capita than any Western country. Around 450 to 560 people from Belgium traveled to Syria and Iraq to join ISIS and other jihadist groups. That's about 40 foreign fighters per million inhabitants, which is far higher than France, which was 18, UK that was 9, and Germany that was 7. That number should be 0. The fact that it's this high means that you have a huge problem in Europe. Even if you have 1 leave your country, you know you have a serious problem because that person does not live in isolation. They are part of a community, a family, a mosque, a network, which means that they have the support base to go and do this a lot of the time, or certainly the radicalization to allow them to go and do this. So if you have 10 people, 20 people, 40 people leave your country, you know that you have a huge problem on your hands. In fact, we know about this huge problem because some of this radicalization infrastructure has been mapped. We have a group called Sharia for Belgium, which is one of the most notorious groups. It's a radical Salafi organization founded in Antwerp. Okay, Antwerp, the place that's like now 60% migrants. It is actively recruiting young Muslims for jihad in Syria. And we know that at least 75 fighters were linked to this network, at least 75 that we know of. We have the Zerkani network, which is a major ISIS recruitment ring based in Brussels, right? Brussels, the same place where the European Union is based. We also have a major ISIS recruitment ring. So if you're traveling through Brussels and you're stopping off at these locations, why not drop in at your local ISIS recruitment ring in Brussels? We also have the Resto du Tawhid organization, which operated around Brussels North train station and used free food programs to recruit vulnerable Muslims to become ISIS fighters. Now, we also have the role of the Molenbeek, which is a district in Belgium. Remember that video clip earlier on with all the women in the headscarves going shopping? This is described by security experts as a jihadist hotspot. At one point, there were 49 terror suspects per 100,000 residents. Those are terror suspects, not people who haven't committed a crime yet or, still have those ideologies. No, these are suspects, like the ones that have already been involved in something. Many ISIS fighters came from this one district, the Molenbeek, and several major terrorists lived there, including these guys, the masterminds behind the 2015 terrorist attack, that brutal attack. I actually went to Paris shortly after it occurred. I took a photo outside of it. It was a bloodbath. Again, this was organized by terrorists that were coming from Belgium. You have the Belgian Prime Minister, Charles Michel, who once said, almost every single time there is a link to Molenbeek. So, for example, the 2016 Brussels bombings, which was at the airport, and we had 32 civilians killed, plus over 300 injured. The 2015 Paris attacks, which I just described, was one of the most horrific terrorist attacks which Paris has seen. We have the 2014 Jewish museum shooting, where 4 people were killed. And we also have the 2015 Thalys train attack, which was a train heading to Paris where there was a massacre, and fortunately the passengers were able to stop it before more were killed. We have the 2023 Brussels Islamist shooting, where the gunman killed 2 Swedish football fans, and the authorities later confirmed that the attacker had pledged allegiance to ISIS. And so we have all of this stuff taking place, but you find its roots in Belgium, which is just mind-boggling to think about because you've got Brussels, the same place where you have the European Union based, also seeing the epicenter of Islamic terrorism in the Western world. And it seems like the two are kind of working hand in hand, where the European Union goes about creating the kind of laws which sees the kind of opening up of Europe, pro-migration policies, anti-Islamophobia laws, and so on, at the same place where you have the epicenter of ISIS recruiting. Just an incredible connection to be seen there. Now, moving on to the sexual violence issues that we're starting to see from the migrants in Belgium. Check out this story. In Kortrijk, I don't know if I pronounced that right, a boy led his girlfriend, who was aged 14, into a forest where she was then gang raped by 10 others aged between 11 to 16, and they were described as being of immigrant origin. They filmed this, they posted it on Facebook, which took place over the course of 2 days. Just imagine if that was your daughter or your friend or your sister. Now, we also have this story of another 14-year-old girl who was sexually assaulted by a 30-year-old Afghan refugee. Now, his lawyer said that a conviction could ruin his future. He had never lived with 3 women before. Now, if I had a penny every time I heard an activist lawyer defending these migrant rapists, I'd be rich by this point. This is the same thing we hear time and time again, that we need to be thinking so much about the human rights and the future of these rapists than the future of the young girls of Europe. Forget about their future. Now we're in a new era of Sharia law, de facto Sharia law in Europe, where we don't care about women, we only care about the men's point of view. And because a sexual assault conviction would ruin the future of this Afghan migrant, perhaps ruin his future prospects of employment, let's erase that so future employers don't know that they're hiring a sexual assaulter so that he can continue doing it to others with no consequence. These are the kinds of Marxists operating in the legal field now defending these people. Now, check out this disturbing story, which was from the same place that first 14-year-old girl was, gang raped in the forest. A woman was torn off of her bike and raped by a Rwandan migrant in the Belgian city of Kortrijk yesterday. After the rape, he tried to murder the woman, but passers-by luckily saved her in time. Now, this is the new normal of Europe. But could you imagine if it was the other way around? Could you imagine if it was a white guy who did this to a black woman? It would be global news everywhere. We'd all be hearing about it. We'd all be talking about it. But how many of you heard about this story? I certainly didn't. But this is the new normal, okay? But there's more, and it gets worse. A Muslim migrant raped and impregnated an 8-year-old girl. And then he said that in his country, sex with minors is acceptable. Of course it's acceptable because it's kind of what Muhammad did. And we know that sexual abuse of children is rampant across the Islamic world. That makes Jeffrey Epstein look like, I was going to say child's play, excuse the pun, but essentially that's what it is. We have huge numbers of young boys being molested in Afghanistan in a culturally accepted practice called bachabazi. Iraq has the the age of marriage be as low as 9 years old. But all across Islamic teachings, there's really no protection of young children, young girls in particular, from being married off. Right? This is the new normal. But now we're bringing them all into Europe, saying that they're going to culturally enrich us somehow, even though their countries don't function very well and they're eager to leave. And now we have to get used to, young people, young children being gang raped or graped, and then even impregnated by these people. It's utterly tragic. I have no words for it sometimes. But the story continues, okay? Here's a story of a college girl who was beaten and raped by a West African who was also convicted of murdering a homeless man who was taken to prison but then prematurely released, where during his release, he went and found this college girl, beat her up, and then raped her. This is also a common theme that's occurring across Europe, across the West, where these people are being found guilty of committing these heinous crimes, but that are then being released early on custody or whatever it is, and then they commit these other heinous crimes, like beating people up, sexual violence, and more. I don't know why Europe is doing this. I don't know why there are no serious repercussions for people doing this. Like, not long ago in Europe, you'd be hung, drawn, and quartered for this kind of thing. No repeat offenses taking place. But what's amazing to see is how much Europe has changed and become completely cucked and walked all over, where it has completely abandoned young women. Where are the feminists? Please, where are you? Here's another story from Belgium. An 11-year-old girl was taken away from her parents by the government as a result of serious family problems. Now, I don't know what they are. I'd be very curious to find out. But because the Belgian government puts pretty much all its taxpayer money into asylum facilities, there's a huge shortage of spots in facilities for endangered children, like foster homes and those kinds of places. Now, because there was no such place available for this young girl, the government put her in a hospital room. But as we know, hospitals don't have doors or locks or anything like that. This child was able to leave. But once she got out, she was, what it says here, immediately raped on the streets of Brussels. Now, the media did not mention anything about the perpetrator, but in a city where about 80% of the young men are of foreign origin, you can make an educated guess on who the perpetrator might be. This is an absolute nightmare, but this whole thing about the media not reporting on who the perpetrators are is actually a huge part of the story. See, in 2020, we know that 28% of all criminal convictions were from foreign nationals. However, foreign nationals only make up 13% of the population. So you look at that and you think, wow, that is already a huge overrepresentation. However, what if I told you that the true number could be orders of magnitude higher than that? And the reason why I tell you this is because the number of people convicted of a crime is tiny in comparison to the number of people actually committing the crime. So for example, in Belgium, less than 8% of reported rape cases lead to prosecution. Okay? So now extrapolate that to how many are being found guilty and convicted, which is that 28%, and realize that this might only be 8% of the actual crimes being committed. This is the question that should be on everyone's minds. Like, if only we had good governments, if only we had a police force with investigators or human rights organizations or women's charities or the United Nations to do something like this. Oh, wait, we do have all those things, but they don't lift a finger when it comes to issues and crimes surrounding migrant populations because it's too politically incorrect. Now, I think what we need to do is make it politically correct by changing the culture, by talking about it more, so that governments and leaders that are emboldened to want to talk about this, that have so far been silent, feel emboldened and supported in trying to talk about this. I think that's one of the ways we need to start tackling this. Let's all start talking about this. Now, here's another story for you. 2 Moroccans were sentenced to 5 years in prison after raping a young man in a toilet in Belgium under knife and gun threat. They forced him to shout "Long live Morocco" during this incident. Now, the prosecutors wanted the crime to be classified as homophobic and racist, but the court said no. Right? Imagine if it was the other way around. Right? Imagine if it was some white people doing this to some Moroccans, making them shout, "Long live Belgium." Could you imagine? Again, it'd be global news. The courts would be saying this is a severe example of racism, Islamophobia, and all this kind of stuff. But no, the court said no in this case because the shoe was on the other foot. Now, there are so many other stories like this. I'll read you just one more. A guy called Yunus, who was 25 years old, an illegal Moroccan migrant, was arrested 10 days after arriving in Antwerp for aggravated theft. He was jailed for 10 months. Now, rather than deporting him, a social worker came to discuss his release. Then she was raped for several minutes inside the prison cell. Now, I'm going to do a whole other video talking about suicidal empathy and why it is that a lot of liberal women find themselves in these kinds of dangerous situations because they become completely naive to the threat. But that's a video for another day. Now, we are going to continue seeing the fall of Europe into this kind of dystopian zombie wasteland unless things change, unless deportations happen. Okay? Until we see Europeans start having more children. That's one of the main things we need to do. We're going to continue seeing the humiliation of churches being converted into venue spaces for Ramadan festivals. And we're going to continue seeing things like this, where this Islamic preacher went to this Christmas market in Belgium and he says that he's on a mission to make people stop celebrating Christmas. Okay, so it's not enough that we have to erect all these security measures around Christmas markets to stop them being plowed down by the religion of peace because Christians and families want to go out and enjoy a peaceful night out that their ancestors have done for over 1,000 years. It's not enough that we have to do all these security measures. And now we're getting the very same people from this ideology coming to these Christmas markets demanding that they stop believing in Christianity and stop celebrating Christmas. How dare they? Bugger off. Get out. Like, what? How is this just happening? Like, how is it not that the local people are not having a stronger backbone to this, right? There needs to be surely some community mobilization against this stuff. Where are the churches? Where are the priests? They've all become part of this kind of ideology of like, everyone welcome, all religions are the same, sure, come into the churches and sing Allahu Akbar to the top of your lungs. Like, these aren't priests anymore. They're not defenders of the faith. This is an absolute abomination. Anyway, I will be making more videos on this. As you know, I talk about this a lot. Now, if you liked today's episode, if you learned something from it, if you were as shocked as I was about some of the information in today's episode, do me a favor and share it. Share it with someone you know, share it in a Facebook group, doesn't really matter, but help get the word out because the window of opportunity to turn things around is closing in on us. And we will look back at this pivotal time and think, how did we allow this to happen? That's certainly the thought that goes through my mind a lot. Now, subscribe to the show if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up, hype the video. Check out the merch store. Check out some of the designs. I think you'll love them. It supports the channel. And I'll speak to you in the next episode. God bless.